All right. Ready to, y'all ready to rock and roll?
Yep.
All right, let's do it. Welcome to the Dad's Watching Sports podcast. Thanks so much for joining us this week. It is Sunday, April 19th. And as always, we're discussing the biggest news in sports along with the lives of all of us dads and what the lives are like in our households, kids 5 years and under, and with all the craziness and everything else that's going on. We also have some special guests along the way, and we've got one here with us this week, and I'll let him introduce himself in just a second. But again, thanks for checking us out on Dad's Watching Sports. You can check us on Apple Podcasts, check us in iTunes, search for Dad's Watching Sports. We'd love for you to interact with us through our Facebook page, also through our Twitter handle at Dad's Watch Sports, and always shoot us an email, dadswatchingsports@gmail.com. We want you to interact with us throughout the week, throughout the show, so we touch base with you and want to know what you're thinking about our show. So I mentioned we had a guest. Obviously, I'm Michael Draper. We've got Kyle Castles and Matt Kirk, as always, here. The three amigos in for the show, Dad's Watching Sports. But we do have a special guest, and I will let him introduce himself. So, Steven, take it away.
Yeah, how you guys doing? My name's Steve Rubio, and I am actually Michael's wife's cousin. Follow along now.
Cousin-in-law.
Yep. Cousin-in-law. Suzanne Draper is my cousin, and we are 364 days apart. So she's essentially a year younger than me. Yeah, like I said, my name's Steve. I'm the Midwest scout for the San Francisco 49ers. Been doing that there now for about 8 years. Prior to that, I worked 3 years as director of player personnel at the University of Tennessee. And then prior to that, I was a coach and then also the recruiting coordinator at the University of Central Florida down in Orlando. So, yes, I am a NFL scout, and I fit in perfectly with the podcast because I'm also a dad. I have a 5-year-old little girl. Her name is Grace Elizabeth, and she's fantastic. Awesome girl. Loves football. Actually, she just loves Jimmy Garoppolo, so who am I kidding?
Don't we all? Well, we're glad to have had Steve here on the show with us, and thanks for taking some time. I know you are extremely busy, given the time of year it is, and we're going to get into that right off the bat, talking the NFL draft. And obviously, we know there's a lot going on with the draft moving to a virtual concept for the first time in history, which I know is going to be really groundbreaking. But we wanted to get some specific questions for you as well, because, you know, this is a show where hopefully we've got some dads listening that have never really been a part of the kind of the behind the scenes stuff that goes along with being a part of an NFL team or the NFL draft. So we've got a couple of questions. So Matt, I'm going to toss it to you there for the first question you got for Steve.
All right. So, Steve, you guys just came off of this playing in the Super Bowl. I'm curious. And before that, and the few years before that, I know it was kind of a rough patch for the 49ers. Is there how does playing in the Super Bowl affect scouting? Is there more pressure now, or was there more pressure before?
I definitely say there's more pressure now because now that there's been a standard set, and then obviously when you're losing a lot of games like we were for a while, you're picking pretty early. So now we're picking a lot later, so that, you know, the pressure is on for sure. But it's, you know, an honor to be in that building and play in that game. It was my second Super Bowl as a part of the 49ers, and it's, you know, a pressure that we'll welcome every single year to the challenge, because that's why we're in this thing. It's what we're trying to do. We're trying to win games.
Yeah, that was a great game. I think you guys will be back there pretty often with Jimmy G.
Yeah, I hope so. You know, he's got everything that we need and that we want. You know, a lot of people want to pin some stuff on him, but it's, you know, it's a team game. So I think we'll be just fine. We lost a couple dudes in free agency, and you know, just rebuild through the draft. So that's why we're here. That's why they send me a check every 2 weeks and try and find better college players and keep moving and try and go back to Tampa. So we were in Miami last year, and now we're just going to try and drive 3 hours towards the West Coast and try to do it all again in Tampa next year.
Yes, sir. Best of luck to y'all next season.
All right, Steve. I thought about asking about all the speed that y'all had in the backfield this year. Like, those three running backs are just unbelievable. But you're a scout, and I've always wondered this. You know, I used to coach. I spent 1 year at college, and I've coached high school, and you know, in high school, getting ready to go to college, you don't have this thing called the combine, but you do going from college to the pros. And I wonder, you know, we hear about all these combine warriors and workout warriors, and, you know, we know that it's just, a bunch of dudes running around in their underwear at the combine, and it's easy to look good there. But the film, I've always been of the mindset the film doesn't lie. So how much does the combine weigh in figuring out, how good this player is versus just the film?
Well, you say it's easy to look good at the combine. You ever try to put those little shorts on and run around like they do?
Hey, I played in college. I wore those little shorts under my pants. I look good in them too.
I can put them on. I just can't pull them off.
So, the combine and the pro day circuit, like where all those numbers are coming up with 40 times and whatnot, it's just simply part of the process. Is it a huge part of the process? No, but it's another piece of the puzzle. As you guys know, we begin looking at guys in the summertime, and then once the season starts, that's the chunk of the scouting, and then everything else is just kind of like I said, the rest of the puzzle. So it's good to have some of those numbers in the pro day circuit and the combine, because a guy might pop up that you might not necessarily thought ran very fast, because there's so many times where you see a guy on tape, and you're like, oh, that guy runs 4.65 all the time, and then he goes to the combine, runs 4.40. So what you want to do is you just circle back on those guys that were plus testers, as we call them, and try and go watch the tape again and see if it translates. But yeah, just like you said, Kyle, I mean, the tape doesn't lie. The tape is your resume, and that's what we're looking at primarily. But the rest of the stuff is all taken into consideration. But for me and how I was brought up in this industry, the film don't lie. I want guys that can play on tape. I don't want guys that can jump, bounds in a single leap and jump over homes and all that. Like I want football players that are tough, smart, physical, fast, and love the game. That's all.
Well, Steve, you kind of just answered my next question that I was going to ask you, but I'll see if you got a few more examples. What are some of the unheralded things that you look for in prospects, or in your job as a scout?
Unheralded, I mean, there's a lot. So when we go into schools in the fall, yeah, we're watching a lot of tape and we're at practices and going to games. But everybody's like, "Oh, you get to sit around and watch football all the time." Yeah, that's half the deal. But the other half is digging on these kids' backgrounds. I've essentially turned into a private investigator with some of these dudes, trying to pull up criminal records and going to talk to janitors and teachers and figure out who's done what, who's done things the right way, who's done things the wrong way, because these are multi-million-dollar investments for us. So when we bring them in, we not only want to know what type of player we're getting, that's where the film comes in, we also want to know what type of person we're getting and if they're going to show up every single day. So, the guys, we have a term we use in our building. We call them gold helmet guys. And these are kids who we classify as draftable, but then they have the gift, as we call it, and that is good intelligence, good accountability, going to be a leader, never going to have to worry about, and is going to come in and be a day one professional, because the less time you have to spend with somebody new in your building as a coach, the more you're able to do other things and not just waste all this energy in one time on this person. Now, every team's got types of, renegades, so we have people to handle those, but you'd rather stay away from all that. So if you're a gold helmet or a G, as we call it, then those are the type of kids like we want and we need, because they make your locker room better, they make your team better, they're better for you on the field, they just make your organization better as a whole.
Absolutely. Matt, well, I'll go ahead and go next. So, Steve, you mentioned earlier in your kind of bio talking about your career that you spent some time in the college ranks as well. What's the biggest difference between scouting and recruiting? Obviously, we know that the kid makes the decision in going to college, where you guys are making the decision to pull the plug on a draft pick. But what are some of the biggest differences between recruiting a kid and scouting?
So how I like to put it is scouting, everything I just went through with in terms of the film and the background and all that stuff. Once I identify a prospect and I give him a grade, I don't have to call him or Facebook him or text him, or I don't have to do any of the nonsense that's involved with recruiting. I don't have to wine and dine parents. I don't have to call the high school coach and kiss up to them. Like, if we want a guy, we draft him. It's the biggest part. And some colleges have come calling and hey, you want to come back? And I'm like, no, I'm good, because that recruiting stuff does not stop. Just ask your brother-in-law, Michael. I mean, it does not. And I'm good on checking my Twitter and my Instagram and Facebook, 80 times a day, just so little Timmy doesn't get his feelings hurt that I haven't messaged him when I'm on vacation. And that's it never stops. So for me, scouting, yeah. If I identify a guy and we like the guy and we got a pick, he's sitting right there. We don't have to sit there in front of the camera and hope he picks up the San Francisco hat and puts it on. Like, you draft him and pay him money. It's great.
There you go. Yeah, absolutely.
So easier. I actually have a life. That's the biggest difference. I have vacation time. That's the difference.
Yeah. Which we all know that's well worth it with the amount of work that you guys put in. So yeah, I can absolutely see that. Matt, I know you got the next question.
All right, so Steve, I have a question. I obviously have a question. I'm curious of how COVID-19 is affecting the scouting. And do you feel like there's more of a risk when you're taking a player that you haven't seen work out in person? And you've obviously said that you that you have the that you have tape on them and everything like that, but I didn't know how it would affect it.
Yeah, it's affected it big time. And literally, I was all this stuff started going down. I was literally on the road in Michigan. I had just finished one pro day at a certain college, and I was about to go to like a major college the next day, where a lot of head coaches were coming in, GMs were coming in. There's some big time prospects, and they had to wind up canceling the whole thing.
So you're going to the University of Kentucky.
That was yeah, okay, yeah.
You misspelled that to Arkansas.
Yeah, you got me. Yeah,
that's right. Shout out to Eddie Grand, Mark Stoops. All that.
Those are my boys. Aaron Henshaw, love you. The biggest thing has been the lack of exposure, and it's not the top prospects. The no-brainer first rounders. I won't go into any specific names for obvious reasons, but what the part that it hurts is the underlying guys, the guys that might pop up who might not have had a lot of production or something on offense or defense, but now they go out and run a 4.35 or a 4.40, and all of a sudden you're going, hey, I need to look at this guy again, because that happens every year, where when you're sitting here at the end of the draft and you have X amount of picks left in the 6th and 7th round, you might take a flyer on, that 6-foot wide receiver from East Central, Northwestern, Eastern Kentucky University, just because he's got verified speed and saw it. So now that we don't have a lot of those times now, it's become more difficult, and it's been, a little bit more work put on the actual scouts to identify these guys, because you just don't have those exact specific numbers. Not to mention that also in the time in March during the pro days, not only are we putting them through combine testing, but we're also taking them out to eat, getting to know their personalities, learning as much as we can about them face to face, so we feel confident about a kid. So yeah, it's difficult now, because we literally are now FaceTiming and calling kids, trying to get to know them over these Zoom calls and FaceTimes, and you still really don't know what you're getting. So yeah, it's a big risk, but at the end of the day, all 32 teams are dealing with the same problem.
Yep.
So you want to call it a level playing field? Like, yeah, absolutely. I actually have some good stories for you guys that I'll tell you off air about certain teams and how they were trying to do some things, but I'm not going to put that.
Yeah, that's probably because we realize we've got people from all the NFL organizations listening to the show every single week, trying to figure out how to balance their life between being a dad and a professional. So we don't want to get you in any trouble there.
Yeah, I've had a lot of players tweeting me actually.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hey, us as scouts are big time podcasters, because I'll spend in the fall, anywhere from 2.5 to 6 hours straight in the car every single day driving. So my whole life, you can only listen to so many Pandora radio stations before you learn the sequence of the songs.
Right. Yeah.
I listen to so many podcasts. So appreciate you guys, man. More content, the better for me.
There you go. Absolutely.
Download after download of podcasts.
There you go. Well, we appreciate the download. Just make sure you share it, amongst all your, all your comrades and coworkers.
Click and subscribe, 5-star rating, guys. Let's do it.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And if you don't, then you're going to stub your toe and I don't think anyone wants that. So
No stubbing toes here. Kyle, you got the one of the last questions.
Yeah, so you watch the draft and everybody gets excited for all these first rounders, and especially the quarterbacks, right? Quarterback is the marquee position in football. But let's be really honest, most teams miss on a first round quarterback.
Mhm.
And you talk about all your study, you've watched the film, you've met with the guy, like this is our guy, and you still miss. Why is the quarterback position so hard to get right?
A lot of times guys are successful, in my opinion, in college because of the scheme they're in. And now when a lot of these guys come out and they can throw the football over the mountains and 90 yards down the field and all that stuff, like that's great. We saw a lot of that with Patrick Mahomes, but he was in a scheme that produced a lot of productive quarterbacks at Texas Tech. And that was just kind of a thing. I mean, every year there's a guy throwing for 4K, 5K, in the air. So the quarterback position is just it's difficult because a lot of the times these colleges are building the schemes around the quarterbacks to fit their skill set. So when it converts to the pro style offenses, it's just completely different. And like you said earlier, there's such a premium at that position that a lot of teams who need them are going to trade up into the first round and take a flyer and reach on a guy. And that's usually when you're going to swing and a miss because there's only so many of them. So you're trying to find the next great one. It's difficult. There's so much that goes on. The game is, everybody talks about, the NFL game is so much faster. You have no idea. I mean, in college, you got 90-something guys on a roster, and you have, 119 Division I teams, right? So the best of that crop's coming into the best of, the world, and there's only 32 starting NFL quarterbacks, and how many of those guys are great? So it's just that pool size just gets so small, and that's when you just get exposed because when he's sitting there lining up against, let's say our defense, for example, you're talking about a rookie or a second-year quarterback who's going up against, two all-pro corners and a front four that can get past anybody, and linebackers that can zone drop and flat buzz and run with the wind. So, he's trying to process things and he's seeing ghosts because, the speed of these defenses are just so fast. So there's so many different variables. It's no different than with the stuff that happened with Tom Brady. I mean, look how far he slipped and look what he's become. Like there's no exact science to this thing. It's all based on opinions. It's all based on hard work that's been done throughout an entire 12-month calendar. And there's no science to it. It's strictly opinions. I can get on a phone call right now with my head coach and we can watch the same three guys, the same exact 3 games on a guy, and everybody's got a different opinion, So good story for you guys here to kind of relate to that. I cover the offensive line once the college season's done in December. We have 3 offensive line coaches that help out with our offensive line. We went through every single draftable offensive lineman together, me included, giving a grade on where we thought they should go on our board and an opinion on them. And all 4 of us had completely different rankings, and that's just the way it is. It's an opinion business. There's no – eventually I don't want to say there's no right or wrong because eventually there's going to be a right or a wrong, but you're just giving your opinion and they're trusting your opinion. So that's all you can do. I've missed on a lot of guys. I've hit on a couple, I guess, but I've missed on.
Well, I would imagine you're in the majority with that as well. I mean, I can't imagine what that's just having to field so many different players and look for so many different things. And like you said, it's just ultimately someone's opinion.
Yeah.
And a player's work habit could change, and I mean, there's just so many variables that could go.
It happens all the time, all the time. Like some guys grow up, some guys never do, but sometimes things just click. Oh, you saying I don't have to go to school tomorrow at 8:00 in the morning? Oh, heck yeah, coach! I'm gonna get up and work out on my own. You never know, man. There's like I said, it's not an exact science.
Yeah.
If it was, I'd be running a team.
That's right. We're talking with Stephen Rubio, the San Francisco 49ers, also more famously known as the cousin of Suzanne Draper, used to be Suzanne Butler. You're listening to Dad's Watching Sports. Steve, I got one more question about the draft, and that's just, with this thing moving to virtual, just from y'all's perspective with the 49ers, I mean, what kind of prep work is going into this, and what are you expecting to see on Thursday?
So we've done a lot of these Zoom calls, and then like I was telling you before we got on this call here, we've actually switched to a different platform just because it's something the league is using. It's been all this, and it's actually been kind of refreshing. I'm sitting there looking at you three guys right now sitting in your homes. Heck, I was doing the same thing this weekend. So we actually on Saturday, yesterday, did a mock draft, so to speak, where everybody involved with the process logged into one of these online virtual chats, and then we kind of broke out and started acting like the draft was going on. That way we could be prepared for it. So it's been I'm one of the younger guys on staff, so I'm super tech savvy. I don't need a whole lot of pointing in the right directions, but a lot of our guys got some issues. So more so for them, like, we get on these calls and I just put my thing on mute and I just, I'll probably do something else and making notes or whatever. And it's been a lot of that, trying to, coach up some of these other guys to show them how to use these platforms, and just trying to make sure we have all the right lines of communications coming on. And so come draft day on Thursday, how it's going to work, I'll give you guys kind of an insight, and I learned all this yesterday. We're using a different platform than Zoom that Michael and I had spoken about through Microsoft. It's called Microsoft Teams. So once you log in, you're in a big room with it'll probably be about 50 to 60, actually probably about 70 people from our organization: coaches, scouts, execs, ownership, doctors, trainers, strength staff, you name it. And once we start the initial thing, then we'll all go in our perspective. They call them rooms. So there'll be a personnel room with all the scouts sitting in there. So come draft day, I'll be on my beautiful leather couch sitting there,
Nice.
with the computer in front of me, looking at other scouts. And then if the general manager or the head coach or somebody has a question, then they buzz into me. I click a button, and then all of a sudden I'm in the big room with them.
Nice.
For the first time in 8 years doing working in this league, I'm gonna be sitting right there on the couch just like you guys will be, and can't have a beverage in my hand, which is terrible. So.
That's right. Yeah, with the video conferencing, they'd be able to check that out for sure. But
will you be
Costner's-
watching the draft live on ESPN, NFL Network, whatever?
So I'll have it on the TV. I'll probably have it on mute because we actually have another program through the NFL that's downloaded on our computer. So I'll have that on an iPad. So like I get the picks, and then you guys see them like 45 seconds, like a minute and a half later. So
there you go.
Tommy, during that, I can give you. I'm just kidding.
I was gonna say, yeah. So I'll have Steve on speed dial on text. We'll just sneak in a Zoom as well. We're going to do a live Facebook feed for the Dads Watching Sports podcast Thursday during the draft as well. So we'll pull Steven as well. So, well, man, thanks for all the insight on the draft. I mean, this is just really cool information for all of us. We're all big football fans, and it's just really cool to get all the kind of behind scenes and what kind of goes into all of it. And I know our listeners appreciate it as well. But more importantly, I know you have a great role with the 49ers and you've worked your way up there, but more importantly, you've got the role of dad. And knowing how busy your schedule is, and I know your daughter, and she's awesome, and I know you love spending time with her. But what does that look like? And we're all going to chip in on this. But what does that look like for you, Steve? Balancing that work-life relationship and being there as a dad on top of being there as an employee for a National Football League team.
Yeah, so it's a lot. And as you know, Michael, my ex-wife and I get along extremely well.
Yeah,
he's actually a flight attendant for Southwest. No free ads.
No, we'll tag them. We'll make sure.
Oh yeah.
That's right.
Everyone can get their luggage for free.
That's right. So my ex-wife and I actually have an unbelievable relationship, and she travels 3 to 4 days a week. So we work really, really well together, trying to build schedules and making it so if she's not there, I'm there, and vice versa. But the traveling can be a lot. So if it wasn't for FaceTime, man, I would have no idea what I would do. And actually, the cool part is my daughter just got like an old iPad that they set up FaceTime on, so now she can call me on her iPad whenever she wants. So
nice.
Yeah, and it was a struggle probably for a while, just because you love your kids, you want to be with your kids. And I probably spend close to 200 nights a year in a Marriott hotel somewhere. # no free ads.
That's
so
right.
I'm gone a lot, but FaceTime is my golden goose, and I actually was fortunate this year. The team actually flew out my daughter and my ex-wife to our Christmas party and for a game in December. I could bring her around that, so now she finally sees who Daddy's always with the other scouts and some players, and she got to meet a ton of our players on our team, and just she was through the roof, just being excited, and that's how her love affair for Jimmy Garoppolo started, and then Nick Bosa, she's got a thing for Nick Bosa too. I'm like, just fight your grandma and your mother for those guys. You guys can figure it out. It's been cool, and a lot of times, like when I'm home, and if I have her on a Saturday night, and it's college football season, like I gotta watch games, like just to track stuff and kind of watch some of my top players, and that's really when I figured how much she really liked the game, because we were sitting right here in my living room watching an Ohio State game this year, and they zoomed in on the offensive line, and all of a sudden she got up and she goes, "Daddy, why are they standing like that?" I go, "Why are they standing like what?" And she gets up and she looked like she was about to like run a sprint, like rear end all the way up in the air, like she looked like a sprinter. Like, "Daddy, how are they doing that?" Then she's like on all fours. I'm like, so I literally had my daughter at like 7:30 on Saturday night teaching her how to get in a 3-point stance in my living room. It was like one of the coolest moments of my life.
Absolutely.
Because then even when she came to our game in December, like, most kids, they can't handle like a sporting event or something like that for so long. She didn't get out of her seat. She was just laser focused on the game. So, it's cool. It's brought something that I think her and I are going to have in common for a long time in terms of loving football in the NFL. And I live in Baltimore, Maryland. My ex-wife is a Ravens fan. All my ex-in-laws are all Ravens fans, and every time they ask Grace who her favorite team is, she's like, "Ravens, yuck. Packers, yuck. I'm a 49er." I'm like, "Okay, that's my girl." So,
yeah, and that's what it's all about right there, man.
She will not sway towards the other side at all. She is all 49ers, man. Like she'll be doing stuff and she'll stop. Like if it's something with math, she'll stop, and when something hits like the number 49, or when she sees the number 49, she has to point it out. Like she's all in with ball, and it's I always wanted a boy growing up, but now that I have her, like I wouldn't trade it.
Yep. That's it's like we mentioned my wife's brother working for the Crimson Tide, and our daughter is always like, "Daddy, we don't say Roll Tide, we say Go Big Blue." And I was like, "Yes, we do, sweetie. I've raised you right. Well, obviously the other three of it, the rest of us, we don't do the traveling, but we're still, we're full-time employees and we're pretty involved in our jobs and stuff, but we also have to do that work-life balance. Kyle, I'll pitch it to you first. Just how do you do that, man, with 3 kids, especially one as young as your daughter? How are you able to balance that work-life balance and keeping your kids at the place they should be, ahead of your job, but knowing you got to be committed to your work?
Yeah, man, it's really hard. So I have my job. I have, being a dad, and then I have something on top of it. I'm crazy enough that I think going and getting a doctoral degree is a good idea. And so trying to get all of those 3 things in a day is absolutely insane. I sneak time, I cheat time as much as I can. If I have a lull at work, I'm reading or I'm writing or whatever I'm doing for my doctorate, I'm doing something. When I get home, I usually, outside of, global pandemics, I usually beat my wife, and she brings the kids home, and I usually beat her home, and I can try and get some work done in that hour-ish that I have. But then once they're home, I put everything away. I'm dad, and I'm doing my deal. And then once the kids are in bed, then I can come back to my work and my wife Lauren, she's an attorney, so she always has something she can be doing, and working for people's cases and billing them and making us more money.
Billing people on behalf of Dad's Watching Sports, that she's now our new.
That's true. She needs to put that on her resume.
Absolutely, that's going to get her to the next level.
Absolutely. I think she could advertise that, and more people will come get divorces and stuff from her.
Yeah. We're just dads watching sports.
Yeah.
But no, it's hard. I do the best I can. Sometimes I got a big project due that week. Like I didn't know if I was going to make this show because I had a prototype for my dissertation due today. Luckily, me and my partner, we got it done by about 5:30 today, which was
Priorities.
well, we were trying, but I didn't know. I mean,
Yeah.
we had to sit down and look at it and make sure everything was edited fine and that kind of stuff before we turned it in. But just you gotta kind of prioritize everything. You said priorities. You gotta prioritize everything, and my kids come first, then job, then the doctoral stuff. And it just kind of goes that way.
Matt, what about you there at the Kirk household? You've got a one that's a little bit younger than all of ours, so it's a little bit more attention that's got to be paid. How are you able to balance that work life?
She is 1. She just turned 1. It's not too bad. I've got it pretty lucky with my wife. She is a rock star, and she takes care of Campbell. I typically go in there at lunchtime. I lock myself in my office where I'm at right now. And then at lunchtime, I go in there and have lunch. And then typically from the time that I get off work until it's time for dinner, that's Emma's time to do her thing, and that's Campbell and Dad time. And then I also typically when it's not COVID time or when we're in a pandemic quarantining, I work out 3 to 4 days a week, and then I don't really get to see her that much. So I always put her to bed, and I always give her a bath, and then we read the Bible, and then I read her a kid's Bible. It's not the real thing. But,
You're in the King James version?
Yes. And she loves to read the Bible, and she loves when I read to her, and it's just kind of a special time for me to get to bond with her, and she just loves it, and she looks at me like I hung the moon, and it's not much of a better feeling as a dad than that right there.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I think from my perspective, it's a lot what you guys said. You just have to, that you're going to have responsibilities, and you just got to find a way to work it in and make sure it's a priority. For me personally, I'm a fundraiser, and we had our biggest fundraising event actually last night. It was a virtual event, so don't worry, CDC, we didn't get people together, but it was a virtual event, and so all last week gearing up towards that. Kudos to my wife as well. She took on the brunt of the child care during that time while also working full time. But we just have to make those priorities and make sure that it's a priority for us to be able to spend some quality time with them, because ultimately that's what they're going to remember. They're not going to remember the things that we bought them. They're not going to remember some of the experiences they had. They're going to remember, was Dad there? Was Dad there to take me to my first ever 49ers game? Or was Dad there to take me to my first ever Mississippi State game? Or to read the Bible to me? Or to say a nightly prayer and give me a bath? That's what the things that they're going to remember. So,
or the Razorbacks.
Us, man, I want to give us props, because I think we do a dang good job. So kudos to all of us for doing all that.
Yeah, because I'm with Kyle there, because like a lot of this, my intentions, because of how I travel, and during the fall, I'm usually home every weekend. So when I get home, like, there is very minimal in terms of work that I have to do other than maybe watching some ball on Saturday. I want to put all that to bed, just so when I can be with her, I can be present. I can be not only physically there, but mentally there too. And that's the biggest thing, because like you said, like you don't know how much time you're going to have with them in a given day. So you want to make every minute count.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, guys, we got a couple of other topics, and we're going to do some quick hitters towards the end. I just want to get some takes on this. But the big next topic is something that's really just kind of come up in the past couple of weeks. And, as we are heading into the end of spring, it's normally the time where college players, elite college basketball players, are making their decision on where they want to go spend the next probably just year, but maybe year or two at the next level in the NCAA. But there's been a little bit of a shift, and it hasn't been a tremendous one, but it could be setting a precedent starting this year. And that's with the G League. The NBA G League has really kind of stepped up their game, where they are now offering some pretty darn good incentive packages for some of the top high school talent in the country to go to the G League for a year and spend all their time there before going to the NBA. And we saw one of the top recruits, I think it's the ESPN 100 top recruit in the country, Jalen Green, just announced this past week he is not going to go to college. I think he was down to Memphis and Auburn were his top two choices. He ends up telling the Tigers in Memphis and in Auburn, hey, no thanks, and gets a $500,000 signing contract with the NBA G League. Couple of things. First off, did anybody see this coming? Kyle, we'll kind of, I guess we'll start with you, Kyle, but is this a legitimate threat to college basketball? Do you see that coming up?
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. I teach high school economics to a bunch of seniors who really could care less. So I got to find ways to get them to buy into what I'm trying to teach them. And one of the things I try to explain to them is, there are some people who say that there are certain ways you shouldn't make money, but I tell them my thought process on that is, I begrudge no one who's making money. So they're like, well, what about like prostitutes and drug dealers? Like whatever, they're making their money, good for them, right? And whether I actually believe it or not doesn't really matter. What matters
Dad's
is
watching sports does not condone either of those things. I'm just saying. I'm gonna throw that out there right now.
Sorry, but what it does, it gets them bought in. But I kind of mean it to some degree. Like as long as you're not hurting other people, if you're making money based on your talents, then good for you. So Jalen Green, good for that kid to go out and make his money. And there is no reason. I mean, we've talked about paying college athletes. When the money's being made off of their backs and they're not getting anything, absolutely somebody should come in and say, I will pay you instead of you making money for someone else for free.
Yeah.
So absolutely, it's a threat. It's needed. I think what we should see is we should see the best of the best come out of high school, go to the G League. College basketball will be filled with a bunch of dudes that can't play near as well, but they'll stay all 4 years. And you'll know who'll be good because they'll be junior and senior later.
Well, and I think, given the reactions we had here, I think a lot of us kind of agree with that. And I'll get everybody's take. I think the thing is how is this going to impact college basketball? And we'll get to that in a second. Steve, what do you think about is this a big threat? Is this something that's just going to continue to grow and grow?
Yeah, I think so. Absolutely. Just because it's a trend. All it takes is one guy to do it, and some of the rest of them are going to start following. What you're going to see is a lot of guys who probably don't even belong in the G League trying to do the same thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would agree. And when I heard the story, it kind of blew me away. Like I didn't even know it was possible through the G League. So yeah, I could see it being that, which isn't fun for us because we love the March Madness. And Michael, I know you're a diehard basketball fan, so if this happens and all the top players go to the G League, Big Blue's got some issues coming their way, boy.
Well, we'll get to, Big Blue's still going to eat. Don't you worry about it.
Here we go.
Just a second. But Matt, I'm interested to hear your take.
Well, I'm sure you won't be interested to hear this, but the reason why Kentucky won't have a problem is because they can offer more money than the G League.
hey, that's right. John Calipari, all he has to say is you come here in 1 year, man, and you're going to be a millionaire next year.
You're going to be a millionaire before you come to school.
Exactly, because they got the insurance because he knows they're going to be a first-round draft pick. But, yeah, go ahead.
But anyway, I'll stop so we don't have to tell our listeners a bunch of fibs. But for me, I think that it would be smart for players to do this. And plus the NCAA is so jacked up with their rules and, they don't really have anyone to answer to. So, they just kind of go willy nilly and do whatever. And, I'm in all support that the players should get, paid for what they do because all it takes is you jump up to do a layup or you block someone's shot and you come down wrong and that's the end of your career. So get it while you can.
Sure. Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think we've talked about this multiple times on this show. I'm all for players being able to make money off their likeness or pursue their craft. We don't tell any kid that's going into a trade after high school, hey, no, you have to go to college and do that in order to do that first. So why should we make these kids? The thing is the one and done rule per se, that's an NBA thing. The NBA instituted you have to be out of college for 1 year. So Kyle, really quickly, do you see that going away in any time in the near future?
No, because here's the thing. They're going to make more money out of this G League thing, right? Like they're Jalen Green, $500,000, right, to go play in the G League because they know they're going to make more money than that off of his name being there, right? So they're not going to get rid of the one and done because they can pay these guys where they should be first-round picks in the draft this year. They can save that money, pay them next year, and still make money off their name, still make money off their ability. So, no, they're not getting rid of the one and done. They can make more money.
All right, so I'm going to give you guys a challenge here. This is called producing on the fly. Because I'm just not sold on the fact that the G League is the way that kids are going to want to go. So I'm going to ask all of you guys, can you name me one city in which there is a NBA G League franchise? Can anybody name me? Okay, Kyle
Yep.
or Matt?
It would be in Frisco, Texas.
Okay, well, you live right there. Okay, well, that's all right. Name
But
me
wait,
another one.
I have another one.
Okay.
one. There's one in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and it's the Mad Ants.
All right. Well, Matt's just disqualified from this competition, but I guarantee you that Steve and Matt or Kyle, we're not going to be able to name like what kid that's going to be.
Oklahoma City has a G League team.
Okay, you guys just pulled up Google. Don't give me a Yeah, I see you looking at your computer there, Kyle. In all seriousness, what kid that's a top prospect that has the chance to go to a Kentucky, to a Duke, to a North Carolina, and be the man? We already talked about there's a good chance they might be getting something anyway. What kid is going to bypass that to go ride a bus? Now, this is not a team that gets a chartered plane that gets to go around. He's going to be riding a bus from Erie to Iowa City to Fort Wayne. What kid's going to sign up for that for a year, knowing he could just go to college for 1 year, potentially make a little bit more, especially if this likeness stuff goes through, and then going straight to the NBA after that? And he's going to be playing against grown men in the G League as opposed to college students. Steve, what's your take? Because I just don't buy that the G League is the path.
This is just going to be like a case-by-case scenario, because what's going to happen is some of these kids who have absolutely nothing and they see a $200,000 signing bonus, and moms, on welfare checks, and families just a mess. Like, you deal with something like that, like the kid's gladly going to take $200K, especially if he's not being recruited by Kentucky, who offers double. So
Hey, Coach Cal, I know you're listening. Don't listen to what they're saying. They're just hating. It's okay. Don't worry about it.
So it's going to be a case-by-case scenario, but like I said, there's going to be some of these kids, and we deal with it all the time in our line of work. Like, they have nothing, so that's why they come out. I mean, there's kids that come out for the NFL draft every single year who have no reason to even put their name into consideration, but they're coming out thinking they can get some money because the desperate times call for desperate measures. And I think you're going to see a lot of that in the G League, and a lot of kids that aren't being advised the right way. And it's the same thing that happens coming out of high school, coming out of college. Kids listen to people they think they trust, but those are people that aren't in their best interest. So they could have somebody in the ear saying, just go ahead and get this 100K cash grab and don't even go to college, and then they could completely bust and never really have a good career. So.
All right, so I'm hire the agent for Melvin Gordon. That's the only thing I'll say about that, because he gives terrible advice.
There you go. All right, so just I want to go around here. We'll go Kyle, Matt, and then Steve. So 2021 recruiting class, over under on 5 players going to the G League as opposed to college. Kyle.
Over.
Matt.
I'm going to go under just because it's still so new. Steve.
Yeah, I'll take the under just because it's fresh.
Okay, one more over under. I'm going to go 5 years for the NBA to drop their 1 year, one and done rule. Kyle.
Over. I don't think they drop it.
Matt.
I'm going over.
Steve.
Yeah, over. I don't think they'll drop that.
Okay. Well, I'm going to take the under on the players. I think I just don't think the G League is going to be. It'll be really interesting to see what happens with Isaiah Todd, who is also another player, and Jalen Green. But I just don't think there's going to be this mass exodus, and I'll take the over. I think the NBA will not drop it as well. Guys, a couple more quick hitters before we go. We just got a few minutes, but I wanted to get these things in. There was a little bit of a controversy in the NASCAR world this past couple of weeks where a driver during one of the virtual races used a racial slur. We won't get into the whole story because we just don't have enough time to really open that box, and this right now is just not the platform to do that. But NASCAR officially and all of his sponsors have officially dropped him. He's suspended, will not be participating. Kyle, right move in making all those moves?
Yeah, I mean, I read the story. It was blatant. It was flagrant. It was unneeded. It was unnecessary. It was awful.
Steve, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, he's a professional driver. You're under professional contracts with big-time sponsors. You're expected, and you're held to a higher standard because there's young kids out there. There's young people out there looking at these guys, watching these things, watching every single thing they do. It's no different than myself. I go out there and I'm wearing a logo on my shirt for a team that that I represent, and I'm going to do everything I can to be up, to hold that organization and to protect the team as we talk it. And
Yeah.
that absolutely get rid of all this stuff.
Matt, I know you're a big NASCAR guy. What's your take?
Man, I tell you, I don't get why he did it. I hope it was just a one-off and it's not a regular word he uses. But he was in an iRacing event, and it didn't have too much of a meaning. He ruined his whole career. Unfortunately, I think because he is such a dominant driver at a really young age. He's 27 years old, and he's been in the chase the last 2 seasons. I see him probably landing on a team, probably a pretty low budget team. They call it Starting Park. I hate that he did it. I hate it for him because that it could hurt his career long term. There's also talks that he may go back to dirt racing permanently instead of being in the spotlight in NASCAR. But there's just no place for that in anyone's vocabulary, and for sure not whenever there are hundreds of thousands of people watching you on TV.
Yeah, and let's be honest. I mean, NASCAR for a long time has had a certain stigma associated with it, and I think they had to do that. It was the right move, regardless of stigma or not. It's the right move. But I think with their, with just having that in the past, I think it's definitely something they had to do. It'll be interesting to see how that kind of unfolds. Last thing I wanted to jump into is, we're recording on April 19th, Sunday night. Right now, I believe episode 2 of The Last Dance, the 97-98 Bulls documentary, is being aired. I'm super excited about this. I'm not even a Bulls fan, but I think if anybody watched basketball and grew up in the 90s, you're excited to see this. Steve, just a quick word about how much you're looking forward to it and what's maybe one big moment you can't wait to see.
Michael Jordan was my favorite player growing up. I was born in '85. I grew up during the prime of his career. I'm pumped. I'm ready to see him dunking, stick the tongue out. I'm ready to see Rodman. I'm ready to see Kerr. I'm excited.
Does the punch between Jordan and Steve Kerr, Kyle, does that make the documentary, you think?
I mean, doesn't it have to?
I think it's got to.
I mean, they had cameras everywhere to film this. Yeah, it's going to have to. No, I mean, I'm excited to see it. Jordan is, I wrote the curriculum for a class I wanted to teach and it didn't get approved, but a class I wanted to teach called Sports and Society. And it was essentially American history, 20th century American history through sports. And basically,
sign up for that right now. Can we just do that class through this podcast?
I'll do it. Yeah. But basically it was, looking at the greatest sports icons. I mean, you start with Babe Ruth, right? And you can talk about there's these big sports icons through American history, but nothing is Babe Ruth until Michael Jordan. You know what I mean? And I'm super excited. I want to see the shot against the Jazz again there at the free throw line to end it with the fist pump and all that. Yeah.
Yep. Matt, one question I've got for you and we'll end the show. A lot of kids that are growing up nowadays that think LeBron is the greatest ever have never seen Michael Jordan play other than some YouTube highlights. They will probably see this documentary. Does it change the narrative on the greatest player of all time amongst kids under the age of, 25?
These people that think LeBron James is better, they're a bunch of buffoons, man. That's stupidity at its finest. LeBron James is a weak individual. He's weak-minded. He does not deserve to be even in the conversation as the top 5 greatest.
Well, we just lost a new subscriber. LeBron just unsubscribed from the Dad's Watching Sports podcast.
I can name 5 players that are better than LeBron James.
You shut your mouth, Matt Kurt. You shut your mouth.
Bird, Magic, Jordan, Shaq.
He is a better Magic than Magic. He is a better Magic than Magic.
We'll save that debate for another time. We're out of time, but Steve, thanks so much for joining us, man. We really appreciate it. Best of luck to you and the 49ers this year going into the season. And we'll get you on sometime in the fall and just recap how the whole draft process went.
Yeah, you guys can give me a call on one of those 5-hour drives and I can talk your ear off about some more specific stuff. It'd be good.
There we go.
You guys have me, man. Anytime. Let me know.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for listening to this week, Dad's Watching Sports. We had a great show, and we hope you enjoyed it. Please download, subscribe, listen, rate, review. You can check us out on Apple Podcasts. Participate with the show, and you know all the ways to do that. We will see you next week as we're going to talk about how are we staying healthy, if we even are, during all this. So we're going to have a personal trainer and kind of life coach join us next week to talk about getting rid of the dad bod and how we do that. So join us next week for that. But this has been Dads Watching Sports. We'll talk to you next time. See you guys.